My name is Emily Moore. My daughter, Isabella, was 12 when she was in a car accident, resulting in her becoming deaf. The doctor said there was nothing physically wrong, but she stopped reacting to our words. A year after the accident, my husband said something unimaginable. "That failure is not my daughter. You take care of her by yourself." My husband thrust a divorce paper at me, with his name already signed. I was momentarily stunned. Surely, we don't need to divorce. It's not Isabella's fault, it was an accident. I've reached my limit. My daughter has to be outstanding. I can't bear the shame of having such a defective child as my daughter. How can you say such things? She is our child. That's exactly why I can't stand it. I can't deal with you two anymore. My husband is 2 years older than me. We met through a mutual acquaintance. He graduated from a prestigious private university and was top of his class. He holds a senior position in a major corporation, having followed a path of elite success. He was also very involved in our daughter's education, enrolling her in private schools since kindergarten and overseeing her studies. With his guidance, she was always among the top 3 in her class. But after the accident, she lost interest in studying, and her grades dropped significantly. My husband, a perfectionist, couldn't tolerate our daughter's academic struggles. However, getting divorced now would be difficult for me. As a stay-at-home mom, I had no savings to raise our daughter on my own. Can't you reconsider the divorce? If you leave us now, how are we supposed to live? That's not my problem. I'll pay child support, of course, so you should just find a part-time job and earn some money. It's time for you to face the consequences of relying on my income all this time. I never chose to be a housewife willingly. I had a career before, but I quit my job following my husband's wishes. He wanted his wife to be a homemaker, focused solely on household responsibilities. Though I wanted to work, I quit my job after persuasion from my parents-in-law. However, it seems my husband has completely forgotten about that time. I wanted to argue back, but I knew it would only lead to more fighting. Still, I tried my best to avoid divorce. If you want me to work, I will, but can we please not divorce? It would be a shock for Isabella to suddenly lose her father. To me, you two are just burdens. A deaf child is nothing but trash. How can you call your own daughter trash? During this exchange, our daughter came to us. She looked at us sadly. Then my husband approached her and whispered something horrendous in her ear. "Becoming such a defective girl. You should never have been born. You raised my hopes and then betrayed them." "What are you saying?" I screamed, but he continued. "She's defective and deaf, so it doesn't matter what I say. She can't hear anyway. Still, it's cruel to call your own daughter defective. The one who should feel sorry is me. I had expectations for her, spent money on her, and it all went to waste. I wish I could have all that money back." Don't you have any feelings for Isabella? Why would I? Who wants to be with a disgusting, defective child? Take this daughter, she's yours now. Seeing my husband's attitude, I made up my mind. Staying with him would only bring us more unhappiness. I have to protect my daughter. I glared at my husband, who was laughing vulgarly in front of me. What's with that look? Got something to say? No, I have nothing more to say. I'll raise her by myself. As I said this, my husband's face lit up with a pleased smile. It was clear he had no more love for us. Then sign the divorce papers. All right. He handed me the pen, and I signed the divorce papers. I never imagined my marriage would end so abruptly, but I had no regrets. At that moment, I was only thinking about my daughter's happiness. The next day, my husband left with only the essentials. The apartment was in his name, so I started looking for a new place to live. When I told my parents about the divorce, they said they would support us for a while. But I couldn't rely on my parents forever. Soon after we started living just the two of us, I began job hunting and eventually found a full-time position. Gradually, my daughter began to smile more. Perhaps life with her father had been stifling. I regretted not ending the marriage with my ex-husband sooner. About 6 months after the divorce, a shocking truth came to light. One day, while I was doing housework, my daughter grabbed my clothes. "What's wrong?" I could tell she wanted to have an important conversation. After finishing the chores, we sat down in the living room to talk. We usually used paper and pen to communicate. But when I offered her the notebook, she shook her head vigorously. "What's wrong?" "Mom." I couldn't believe my ears. My daughter hadn't spoken a word since the accident. But it was indeed her voice. "Isabella, you can speak." She nodded slightly. It seemed my voice reached her. "Did you suddenly start hearing again?" She shook her head. After a pause, she began to slowly reveal a truth she had been hiding. "The truth is, I didn't really lose my hearing in the accident. I've just been pretending not to hear all this time." "Is that so? Why did you lie about it?" My daughter began to cry, clearly recalling painful memories. I gently rubbed her back. "You don't have to talk about it if it's too hard for you." "It's okay. Dad's constant pressure to study was too much for me. I couldn't tell you, Mom, but whenever my grades dropped even a little, he would hit me." "What?" Then my daughter took off her jacket, revealing scars on her back. Apparently, these were from my husband hitting her. Thinking back, Isabella had suddenly started refusing to bathe with me. She must have been trying to hide her injuries. She had been threatened by my ex-husband not to tell anyone about the wounds. Seeing her tears, I was filled with anger towards him. But there was nothing I could do now. I felt incredibly frustrated. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize. You've been suffering so much all this time," I said, hugging her gently. She continued to cry for a while, likely holding back her feelings for a long time. Once she calmed down, my daughter spoke with determination. "I refuse to be defeated by Dad. I'll get into a better university and work at a better company than him. I want to prove him wrong." Her eyes were filled with a fighting spirit. My daughter had been pretending to get lower grades while living with my ex-husband, but in reality, she had been studying secretly. As her mother, I naturally intended to support her if she was motivated. I decided to firmly support my daughter going forward. "I'm always on your side, Isabella. If you want to work hard at something, I think you should go for it." Saying this, I held her hands. My daughter smiled happily. "I knew you'd say that, Mom. I'm glad to be your daughter." Her words made me so happy I almost cried. I'm truly blessed to have her as my daughter. Even without a partner, having my daughter by my side was enough for me. Afterward, I explained my daughter's hearing situation to my parents and her school teachers. My parents understood her desire to work hard at her studies and offered financial support. Her teachers, understanding the situation, promised to pay more attention to her. We had many people around us offering support, which was a great help. My daughter then worked hard and got accepted into the top-ranked school in our county as the top student. Considering our family circumstances, she chose a public high school. She continued to excel in high school, maintaining top grades. Though there were times when her grades slipped or she struggled, she remained positive. She expressed a desire to work in a field related to English and aimed for the foreign languages department in college. After persistent efforts, she successfully got accepted into the college she aspired to, which was also the one my ex-husband had failed to get into. My daughter was overjoyed at her acceptance. "With this, if you can get a job at a better company than him, you'll have surpassed him. Isabella, you've worked so hard. Your efforts are truly amazing. I could do it because you supported me, Mom. Thanks for cheering me on all this time. Of course. You are my precious daughter, after all." Hearing this, Isabella smiled brightly. I am so happy she is my daughter. I wanted to continue protecting her smile. In college, my daughter maintained top grades and eventually graduated as the valedictorian, receiving awards for her academic excellence. After graduation, she landed a job at a major multinational corporation. As an adult, she began living independently. One ordinary day, unexpectedly, he showed up. My ex-husband. He came during a long vacation, apparently having tracked us down specifically to visit. It had been 10 years since I last saw him. Naturally, he had aged and put on quite a bit of weight. He must have been leading an unhealthy lifestyle. His clothes were pilled and his hair unkempt. "It's been a long time," he said, scratching his head and smiling awkwardly. "What do you want, showing up out of the blue like this?" "We're strangers now," I responded, without a smile, my expression cold. "Don't be so cold. I came all this way to see you. I didn't ask you to come. What do you want?" "Actually, I heard some rumors about Isabella." "Isabella?" Just then, my daughter appeared beside us, likely having heard us talking. As soon as he saw her, my ex-husband's eyes welled up with tears, and he walked towards her. "You've done well. Impressive. I heard you're making quite a name for yourself at the company," my ex-husband said, embracing Isabella. However, my daughter clearly looked uncomfortable. "Who are you?" "I'm going to call the police," she said in a cold voice, pulling away from him. Her eyes were as cold as ice. Seeing this, my ex-husband looked somewhat sad. "I'm your father, you haven't forgotten, have you?" "I don't have a father. My only parent is my mom. Why come back now after you abandoned us?" "I was wrong back then. I didn't understand you properly." Apparently, my ex-husband had heard about Isabella from a contact working in a multinational company. Her remarkable achievements had become the talk of various companies, reaching my ex-husband's ears. He also learned that my daughter could hear. But he didn't seem to know that she had been pretending not to hear. "When did your hearing get better?" "I could always hear. I just pretended not to because I disliked you." My ex-husband was taken aback by her revelation, clearly unsettled. "Is that true?" "Yes. So I remember everything you said to me when you and Mom got divorced. You called me defective, remember?" "That." My ex-husband fell silent, unable to respond. It seemed he hadn't forgotten those times either. Then he deeply apologized to my daughter. "Can't you forgive and forget the past?" "I've been reflecting. I was terrible to you back then. It was all my fault." My ex-husband, with tears in his voice, offered his apologies. But even seeing him like this, I couldn't forgive him. He was the one who had made our daughter suffer. It seemed Isabella felt the same way. "You betrayed Mom too, right? How can I forgive you just because you apologize now? I don't ever want to see your face again, so please leave." My daughter coldly rejected him. She then hid behind me, putting distance between herself and my ex-husband. "She's made herself clear. Can you please leave now? You don't belong here. I came here wanting to start over with you too. Living alone is too hard. How about we get married again and live as a family of 3? My ex-husband's ridiculous suggestion left me dumbfounded. Besides, I had a reason why I couldn't get back together with him. "Sorry, but I can't start over with you. Please give up." "Don't say that. I think we can make it work now. I won't be harsh on Isabella like I was 10 years ago, and I'll be kind to you." He deeply apologized to us. I decided to inform my ex-husband, who was oblivious to a crucial fact. "Actually, I got remarried 3 years ago." "Remarried?" My ex-husband exclaimed in shock. It had been 10 years since our divorce. It wasn't strange for me to have remarried. But he seemed overly surprised. "You got remarried? It's been 10 years since our divorce. It's not that surprising, is it? And you didn't notice the wedding ring on my finger?" I showed him the ring on my left hand. Apparently, he hadn't noticed it, being too engrossed in the conversation. We deliberately didn't put up a nameplate at our house, which is probably why he didn't realize it. 2 years ago, I married a man 2 years older than me whom I met at work. He's a great father who cares deeply for my daughter. It seems she is quite fond of him too. We were living many times happier than when we were with my ex-husband. My ex-husband seemed quite shocked to learn about my remarriage. Why would you marry someone else when I'm still around? We're divorced, so I'm free to live my life however I want. We're strangers now, aren't we? Then, my daughter spoke up. You have the nerve to come back after cheating on mom and leaving us. She muttered this to my ex-husband. And I could see him visibly pale. What are you talking about? I never cheated. Remember when I said I was pretending to be deaf? I heard you clearly on the phone with your mistress. You divorced mom because you wanted to be with her, right? I guess you're here because you've broken up with her now. Truth be told, I hadn't known about my ex-husband's affair until my daughter told me. After the accident, he had blatantly talked to his mistress in front of my daughter. He used to leave home often back then. Probably to meet her. Later, I found out he had been cheating with a younger woman he met at a nightclub. And married her after our divorce. He must have loved her more than us. I could have demanded compensation for his cheating, but I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. I was wrong to cheat. But I promise I won't betray you two again. Look, I'm already remarried, okay? Even if you apologize, there's no way we can get back together. Despite my words, it seemed my ex-husband wasn't ready to give up. He must have had some pressing reasons to want to reconcile with us so desperately. Then, without being asked, my ex-husband began to talk about what happened after our divorce. I broke up with her 2 years ago. Her? The woman you had an affair with? Yeah. Apparently, his mistress at the time was 29 years old. 16 years younger than him. After marrying her, they didn't have any children and lived together as a couple. She quit her job to become a housewife, but soon started neglecting household chores and pushing them onto him. She also got into host clubbing, spending his money recklessly. When he confronted her, she would explode in anger. Her parents even came to blame him, making him weary of the marriage. He struggled to get a divorce due to strong opposition from her parents. But finally managed to after she cheated on him with another man. It seems he didn't demand any alimony. After the breakup, I became distrustful of women and lost my focus at work. Then I made a big mistake at the company. A few months after their split, he was fired from his job. I was surprised to hear how drastically his life had changed. So, what are you doing now? I managed to find another job, but my salary has been cut in half. Even if it's half, you were earning well before. That should be enough to live on your own, right? Well, about that. He seemed hesitant to say more. It was irrelevant to me, but he continued talking. I've recently fallen into gambling due to stress. I have about $60,000 in debt now. Before marrying me, my ex-husband had a phase where he was addicted to gambling. He quit for our marriage. My ex-husband always had a habit of overspending when stressed. Even during our marriage, he once came home with a shopping spree worth nearly $6,000 after a bad day at work. It seems his character hasn't changed. You're not expecting me to pay off your debts, are you? But since you're living in such a nice house, you must have some money, right? I'm not asking to get back together, just lend me some money, please. He begged me. I was speechless at how far he had fallen. Of course, I had no intention of lending him any money. Thanks to my current husband, we were comfortable, but I had no money to waste on my good-for-nothing ex-husband. Why don't you borrow from a consumer finance company or even a loan shark? I've already borrowed up to the limit from those places, and they've said no more loans. And I can't afford to increase my debt anymore. With my current job, I don't see any pay raise in the future. My ex-husband seemed reluctant to leave. Irritated, I began to lose patience. Can you stop already? We have plans to go out as a family of 3. My husband is coming home soon, so it's better for you to leave now. Just promise to lend me the money, and I'll go right away. He grasped my hands. Don't touch me. I shook off his hands forcefully. He looked at me with tearful eyes. Why? You're being persistent. We have our own lives. If you keep insisting on staying, I will really call the police. You're so harsh. The man who used to boss me around was nowhere to be seen. Seeing my ex-husband break down in tears, I couldn't help but wonder why I ever married him. I couldn't see any redeeming qualities in him from my current perspective. As we were having this exchange, my husband came home. He frowned at the sight of my ex-husband sobbing at the entrance. I had shown my husband a picture of my ex before. And since he's good at remembering faces, he immediately recognized him. What are you doing here? My husband asked in a cold voice. You are. I'm Emily's husband. Tall and with handsome, actor-like features. My husband looked quite the opposite of my ex, who seemed a bit jealous. Do you need something from my wife and daughter? They seem bothered by you, so please leave. But I still have things to discuss. Like what? Well, I'm a bit short on cash. That has nothing to do with my wife. You're just in trouble because of your own actions, so please don't involve her. My ex-husband looked annoyed. But my husband stood firm. If you continue to disturb us, I'll call the police immediately. We're close to the station, and I know some officers who can come quickly. My ex then turned a pleading look towards me. You've always wanted to get back with me, right? What? What are you talking about? You didn't want to divorce me back then. I'm thinking of taking good care of both of you from now on. So, as my ex-husband desperately sought reconciliation, my daughter spoke up. You should take a look at your own unsightly figure before you talk. Who would want to live with a dirty, obese man like you? Our current dad is handsome and kind, and we're proud of him. Maybe you should try to dress more like him. If both your appearance and character are rotten, nobody will want to be around you. Her words seemed to deeply wound him as he began to cry. Please leave now. We're going out for dinner, the 3 of us. You really won't give us another chance? Don't be ridiculous. Who would want to get back with an unhygienic, broke man like you? Talk such nonsense in your dreams. I see. All right. Resigned and dejected, my ex turned away and left. After this, we never saw him again. After my ex left, we went to the upscale restaurant we had planned on. It was a really happy time, enjoying a leisurely meal together as a family of 3 for the first time in a while. From what I heard through acquaintances, my ex-husband continued his unhealthy lifestyle and eventually developed diabetes. His condition became serious, and he had to be hospitalized. Since then, he had to quit his job and is struggling to pay his hospital bills while dealing with debt. After our divorce, he was estranged from his relatives, and his parents had already passed away, so he had no one to turn to. He never maintained any close friendships, so no one visits him in the hospital, and he's fighting his illness alone. It's a harsh reality, but he might end his life in loneliness. I have no sympathy for him. It might sound cruel, but I think he should endure the loneliness he deserves for making our daughter suffer. Meanwhile, my daughter continues to excel at her job, earning recognition and handling important tasks. She's also in a relationship with a man she met after becoming a working adult. She seems to be considering marriage with him. I've met him. He's a genuinely nice young man who always greets us cheerfully, and both my husband and I like him. Moving forward, I plan to enjoy my life while I wish for my daughter's happiness. My name is Amelia. I married Mark 2 years ago and became the mother of his daughter, Michelle. Recently, our son George was born, and I thought we were happy. But things were taking a turn for the worst. When I returned home from George's 1-month checkup, I found that the front door wouldn't open. What? You're back already? No matter how hard you try, it won't open. Dad had the locks changed while you were out. Wait, Michelle! Why are you joking about this? Please open the door. George is fussing, and I have a lot of stuff with me. Hey, you're being noisy. Think about the neighbors. Mark. What's with that tone? Please, just open the door. If you're worried about disturbing the neighbors, then just let us in. That's not possible anymore. This is no longer your house. Your belongings are out in the yard. Take them and leave immediately. Wait, this has to be a joke, right? Why is this happening all of a sudden? Are you saying this is because of me or George? You got it. The reason you two are being kicked out is because of the babies crying at night. It's annoying. Now that you know, can you just leave? You're a nuisance. That's right. The locks are changed. You two can live on the streets. And here, a divorce paper. I'll submit it right away. All you need to do is to agree the divorce and wait for the notice. Though, I doubt you two can survive on your own. Please, this has to be a joke, right? George was just born. We just talked about living happily together as a family of 4. George is our child, right? And Michelle is important to me too. You really want to tear apart our family? Excuse me? What are you misunderstanding? My family is only Michelle. You two are different. What do you mean? I never intended to have a child with you in the first place. My love was always meant for Michelle. Look at her classmates. There's no girl as cute as Michelle, right? That's why, when you told me you were pregnant, I was actually upset. Oh, and how did I explain Michelle's mother's absence? You said she passed away due to illness when Michelle was 4. So, you've been taking care of her alone since then. You said you were happy to have met me, told me so many times. Yeah, that's right, I said something like that. That was all a lie. Michelle's mother wasn't sick, I kicked her out. That's awful. How could you do something so terrible? Are you even human? A parent? You laughed and seemed happy when I was pregnant and when George was born. Were you mocking me, thinking how I was still being deceived? Who knows? It's up to you after all, isn't it? Weren't you happy with me and Michelle for those 2 years? Didn't you feel like the happiest person in the world when George was born? Who gave you that happiness? It was me, standing right in front of you. I let you live in a dream, even for a moment. Isn't it cruel to make me the villain now? That means nothing if it ends with betrayal like this. I thought I was happy, but I was just being made to think so, right? Were you planning to take George away from me eventually? Once he grew up enough not to need his mother? No, I never thought that when a boy was born. I don't like boys. They're not cute and they defy me. If it had been a girl, maybe I would have considered taking her. But it was a boy, and I don't need him. So, you lost interest when you found out I was having a boy. Looks like you understand. I never had any interest from the start. You were just a convenient woman at the time. All that talk about loving and cherishing you was all lies. But no one knows I'm like this, right? So after you leave, don't go saying unnecessary things. That's none of your concern. What happens to me and George is none of your business, right? So, don't complain about anything I do from now on. You suddenly get so bold, but you can't do anything without me. That's right. You couldn't even scold me without Dad. You can't be a mother. You don't even have anywhere to go. You should have begged and cried to Dad. But Dad won't help you anyway. Fine, I get it. But no complaints about where I set up the tent, okay? I'm leaving this house as you said. There's no point in me and George staying here. We won't be happy. Thank you for everything till today. So, take care. I turned around, packed what I needed, and got back into the car. From inside the house, I could hear their laughter. This is not the end. The next day. Finally, that annoying one is gone. I always hated how she acted like a mother. No one can be my mother. She should at least be cuter than me before saying such things. Yeah. I've never seen anyone cuter than Michelle. I'll protect Michelle alone from now on. I thought about finding another woman to take care of Michelle, but I changed my mind. It's just a waste of time and money. Come on, Dad. You shouldn't say that where people from work can hear you. We're closer to your workplace from here, so let's keep it to ourselves at home. I'm happy you care about me. Michelle is so mature for a 6th grader, noticing things like that. Okay, I've reached work now, so I'll talk to you tonight. Make sure you work hard on your studies. Hey, isn't it noisy outside the company? Yeah, it really is. What's going on? There are so many people. Maybe something happened at your company, Dad. Damn, what a hassle. Just when I was about to enjoy life with Michelle. Who is it this time? It looks interesting, so I'm going to check it out too. Maybe I can help if there's a problem. Michelle, you're so kind. All right, let's go together then. Excuse me, coming through. I work at this company. Wait, what? Why is there a tent in my company's parking lot? Hey, I don't want to think it, but isn't that the tent of that woman? No way. That can't be. She doesn't have the guts to do something like this. And she doesn't have the money for such a fancy tent. Sorry for setting up a tent here. But I have nowhere else to go. My family home is long gone, and I have no one else to rely on. I thought this place, being busy, might be safer. Hey, Dad! Isn't that? Yeah, it's Amelia. Why is she here? I kicked her out. She shouldn't have anywhere to go. I'm really sorry. It's a huge inconvenience, but could you let me stay just a little longer? I'm looking for a place to live and will leave as soon as I find one. I and my son have nowhere else to go. Dad, what are we going to do? If that woman stays here, you can't work properly. It's okay. No one at work knows about her. If I ignore her, no one will notice. Sure, I have to pass by that tent, but I can do it when she's not outside. Don't worry, it won't be noticed. Good morning, Mark. Why are you standing there like that? And good morning to you too, Michelle. You two look close as always. Oh. Cynthia. Good morning. Just wondering why there's a crowd in the parking lot. Nothing serious. I'll be heading in now. You better not get involved with those people, they seem a bit crazy. Come on, Michelle, you'll be late for school. Let's go. Okay. But, Dad. Who's that lady? How does she know my name? Who? That's Cynthia, my boss. A respected senior, liked by everyone. Michelle, you met her when you were much smaller, right? I met Michelle when she was really little, maybe just once. She was still being carried by Mark back then, so she might not remember. That's right. You see, Michelle, be polite now. Sorry, she's not very thoughtful. It's okay, dear. She's grown up so much, becoming more and more like her mother. What? Hey, Dad! She's scary! What's going on? How does she know about Mom? You said nobody at work knows Mom. Nobody knows if I look like Mom. Now, calm down, will you? If you get so upset, you'll ruin your beautiful look, the beauty like your mother. Don't be in such a hurry, you'll find out everything in time. Maybe not sooner, but today. No. What are you talking about? Who are you? You just show up out of nowhere and said I look like Mom, it's so weird. I've had enough of this. Dad, I'm off to school. Yeah. Take care. Oh, Mark, you are so kind to Michelle. Why don't you show that kindness to your wife? What are you talking about? What do you know about us, Cynthia? It's none of your business who I'm nice to. Don't even meddle in the affairs of other people's homes. I've had enough of you complaining about me at work. Oh, you're talking so loud. I don't know anything. Did I hit the nail on the head by being so loud? You know, you're the center of attention because you yelled so loud. Do you really want to yell at me, a senior, in front of this many people? Damn, what the hell? Shit. Michelle. You're done here, get the hell out of here and go to school. I'll take care of it, get the hell out of here. Oh, no. This is a family matter, isn't it? You can't bring family problems into the company. If you don't want to get involved in your family matter, you need to get it straightened out. You need to settle the matter, then, don't you? What's the matter with you? That's enough. You want me to put my family problems behind me. I don't want to be told by you, who's divorced once. Just get the hell out of here, Michelle. Well, okay. No, you can't do that. I'll never let you go. Hey, Amelia? You need Michelle to listen to you, don't you? No way. That has nothing to do with Amelia. I have nothing to do with that woman anymore. Exactly. Cynthia's right, it's not only about Mark, but also about Michelle. I need to have them listen together. Oh, I knew it was you. It's surprising you thought you could hide it from us. So many people are watching. Did you really think you could tell them that you weren't involved with that all along? That's too bad. I know what kind of person you are. Did you really think no one knew? Oh no. No one knows anything about me. I've been doing well for a long, long time. There's no way they can find out now. You're right, it's not now they've found out about you. People have known what kind of person you are for a long time. We also knew that you kicked your ex-wife out of the house because of your selfishness. Why? Why do you even know all that? I've been hiding it from people for so long, and they've all been fooled for so long. It's not my fault, it's all my ex-wife and Amelia's fault. That's true. Everything is my fault. I was the one who couldn't stop George's crying at night, and I was the one who was cheated all along. It's not Mark's fault at all. Hear that? See, even that woman says she was wrong. I think everyone was deceived by you. Cynthia, you pretend to be a good person, but you're a black-hearted person, aren't you? You told everyone that you're that kind of person. Yes, you're right. Maybe I'm as black-hearted as you say. But you're the only one who didn't know this. Everyone else knows I'm like this. Besides, I told them you were a scumbag. They tried to kick you out, but I stopped them. You have Michelle, and you don't want her to end up on the street, do you? That's why I kept you where you were. Don't be selfish. You kept me where I was? How dare you talk to me like that? Did I ask you to do that? I know you didn't ask me to, but I can tell by the look on your face. You've always tried so hard not to be disliked by everyone. When will they find out you're a bum, or will you be able to get away with it? Did you feel comfortable living with that kind of fear? At least from my point of view, you seemed pretty uptight. Shut up. It's none of your business how I live. How do you know what's going on in my house? Maybe you went out of your way to find out what I'm up to? If that's the case, it's too creepy. How desperate are you? You wouldn't want me to leave this company, would you? Are you having fun trying to get rid of me like that? Do I enjoy doing that? I'll say it right back to you. Do you enjoy kicking out people who care about you? What do you want with your ex-wife and Amelia? You haven't ever even dreamt that you are doing something terrible, have you? I said that's none of your business. It's my life, so how I live it is my business. Rather than that, I want to know how you know about my personal life. How did you know I kicked my ex-wife out? It's simple. Your ex-wife and my sister are just good friends. She worked at a beauty salon, right? My sister is the owner of that salon. That's why I know the story. It's nothing to go out of my way to tell you, so I've kept quiet about it. I didn't think you were capable of such a terrible thing, so even after the divorce, I didn't mention it because I thought it was between individuals after all. But it's just unthinkable for me to kick out your second wife, too. Besides, Amelia, George was just born, right? Do you know how hard it is to raise a child by yourself? Even if you had taken Michelle in, it would have been your parents who would have raised her. You only took care of her when you went out on your days off. And when you came back home, you just laid around, didn't you? How can you say that you are raising your child in a respectable way? You only pretend to do the good parts of parenting and leave the bad parts to others. You married Amelia because you wanted to replace your old mother, didn't you? Didn't you marry Amelia because you couldn't take care of her yourself? Wow, that's amazing. It's like she sees through everything. What? It's not like she sees through everything. After all, this old hag is just saying what she wants to say. What do you know about me? You don't know anything, so don't get involved. I'll sue you for defamation of character. If you can sue me, just sue me. I'm recording what I heard, too. I thought this might happen again. Your ex-wife got a share of the property, but you can't do that now, can you? You still had a lot of money to spend before you married Amelia, didn't you? Amelia is kind, so I don't think she would have tried to force you to collect. That's why I removed obstacles in her way. Not only for Amelia's sake, of course, but also for the sake of sweet George. Don't keep doing unnecessary things. From the start, this one being here is basically what she wanted, right? Amelia should have just stayed at a hotel nearby. Why didn't she just stay at a nearby hotel? She went to the trouble of coming to my work to harass me. I told her to come here because this is where people can see you for what you really are. You have a nice face, but they need to see how bad you are as a human being. We shouldn't let anyone be fooled by you again. That's how many people will be unhappy, right? We have to prevent the misfortunes that can be prevented. But that doesn't mean you have to do this terrible thing. What did my dad do to you guys? It's none of your business what happens to that woman. You're all just a bunch of jerks being mean to my dad. You're disgusting. Say whatever you want. I still won't forgive him. I'm glad I got Amelia's contact information beforehand. I was surprised when he brought her all the way here to show off to everyone. Don't worry, Amelia. You are still young and can start over as much as you want. Not all men are this terrible. I am sure there will be someone who will love you and George too. Until the day you meet someone like that, be patient a little longer. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad I relied on Cynthia when I was kicked out. From now on, I will try not to be pushed around by men like this. Why are you trying to end on a good note? It's none of your business. You guys may think you've done it. I have Michelle. What if I lose my job because of this? Who's going to protect Michelle's life? Can you guys take responsibility for that? Are you going to raise Michelle for me? When you're in a tight spot, you become extremely loud. It's disgraceful for a grown man. That's a complete shift of responsibility. It's all your fault that things turned out this way in the first place, isn't it? When you moved out of the house, Amelia told you not to complain no matter where she put up her tent. So you have no right to complain. Besides, I heard you slammed down the divorce papers. How can you still act like you're her family? It's up to others to do what they want, isn't it? I know you haven't filed the papers yet, but in your mind, the relationship is over. You should be prepared to pay up child support. Dad, what's going to happen to us? Will I get separated from you? It'll be fine, Michelle. I'll take care of it. Hey, you. You guys who are listening to me, too. There's this girl who needs me so much, and you're going to pull her away from me all the way. As human beings, think about how arrogant you're being. Michelle's still in elementary school. And yet you make her leave her father. How dare you talk to us like that? Who took the child from your ex-wife? Who took George's father away from you? You chose all of this for yourself, didn't you? It's okay for you to do it, but you don't want others to do it to you? Didn't you learn that you shouldn't do to others what you don't want them to do to you? I'm sure that's how most people learn, but maybe it's a different culture. You may pretend to be brilliant, but in the end, you're selfish. If you're good at what you do, surely you can work anywhere, right? Well, though I'm sure that wherever you go, you'll soon show your true colors. Damn! What the hell? Why are you so hostile to me? What did I do to you? I didn't cause you any trouble. That's why. It's not my problem. But I can't watch it. I'm a woman and a mother. I know how hard it is to not be able to see your children or to have to raise them by yourself. That's why I want to help those close to me who are having a hard time. I know it's meddlesome, but it would be nice if I could help someone. That's what's motivating me this time. But that doesn't mean it's fair to do it this way. I'm the only one who's bad, and everyone is blaming me. Don't you think about me getting hurt? How can you say such a thing after hurting so many people? Everyone has already seen what you really are. But don't worry, they'll be nice to you. Because they're adults. Sometimes you have to lie to yourself to get along with others. They all understand that, so don't worry. No matter how much they dislike you, they'll always smile at you. No. I can't stand that. All this time they've been so nice to me, they've been lying to me. The truth is, they just laughed at me, I was just a clown. I'm quitting this company. Don't regret it when I'm gone. Do as you like. The president is just there, and why don't you talk to him about it? I don't think anyone will stop you. Well, I'm sure you won't get a decent job wherever you go. Mark was so deeply frustrated that he ran away from the place with tears in his eyes. Later, Cynthia told me that Mark had resigned from the company just like that. Thank you so much, Cynthia. It's okay. Don't worry about it at all. We should help each other in times of need. I think I would have been on the street if you weren't here, Cynthia. You lent me your tent and introduced me to this place. I didn't know there was a shelter for single mothers in the next town over. Yeah, I don't make a big show of it. It's best if people around you can support you in this way. I couldn't do anything for his ex-wife, but I'm glad I was able to help you. How do you feel at home here? Are you getting along with everyone? Yes. Now that things have finally settled down, I think it's time to start looking for a job. I'm glad George isn't too much of a crier. George is really a good boy. I hope he will be happy in the future. Of course, it's not just George, but you too, Amelia. Thank you very much. We will be happy together. That's the spirit. Michelle was placed in an institution and seems to be happy there. She was always so protective of her father, but maybe she saw things for the first time when she was away from him. Mark seems to be having a hard time finding a job. I see. I'm glad I was able to recover at least George's child support. Yeah. It's not something that you should be worried about. It's all his fault. Well, I'm sure Michelle will be fine, and you should be happy. I'm going to raise George with the help of others. I hugged George tightly and promised myself again. You still have that gloomy look on your face. Wait, are you still single and living with Dad? That's hilarious. It was a holiday when the doorbell rang, and standing at the front door was my younger sister who once stole my husband. 2 years ago, I discovered her affair with my husband, leading to our divorce. Since then, I had lost track of both of them, but suddenly, my sister returned, ridiculing my appearance and flaunting her wedding ring. "We got married, so I thought I'd stop by for a greeting. I'm living happily now with your ex-husband." My name is Zoe. Ever since I was young, I've been complex about my appearance. My face and body are average, with no distinctive features. To others, I'm just ordinary, but I have a beautiful younger sister, Sophia. Ever since we were young, I've been constantly compared to Sophia, who is 5 years younger than me, in terms of appearance. Relatives would often comment behind my back, "Sophia is so pretty, and Zoe is so plain. Are they really sisters?" I accidentally overheard them saying such things. Sophia always looked down on me, knowing how the relatives talked about me. She was selfish, believing she was superior to me, her older sister, so it was common for her to beg for my things or just take them if I refused. That's why living together in our family home often left me with unpleasant feelings. However, my parents always treated us sisters equally, regardless of our looks. They showered me with love, never minding the relatives' mean comments, which made me adore them. Although my parents always shielded me from the hurtful words of our relatives, things were different at school. There, I couldn't escape the harsh comparisons. At school, I was constantly compared to Sophia, a cute younger sister and a plain elder sister. Facing these comparisons often, I resolved to excel in studies, knowing I couldn't compete in looks. Thanks to that, I kept my grades at the top of my class. Especially in Spanish, I excelled. My parents praised me a lot every time I scored well on a test. Tragically, my mother passed away in an accident when I was 17. After grieving, I began to do the household chores in place of my mother. However, Sophia hardly seemed to mourn our mother's death and started treating me like a servant. Sophia would always wait until our father was away on business to act up. At this time, she had just entered middle school. She would order me to buy snacks and drinks, treating me like her errand girl, and sometimes even demanded money. "My allowance is so little every month. You're not interested in fashion or anything, and you don't buy stuff, so it wouldn't hurt to lend me some," Sophia would complain. Reluctantly lending her money, I never saw it returned even once. Seeing her become more demanding than ever, I realized I needed to leave home to escape being exploited. Determined, I studied hard and got into the university of my choice. I started living alone when I enrolled, and after 4 peaceful years, I landed a job at a major multinational corporation. My Spanish proficiency, already a strength, improved further at this company. Despite the challenges, I found fulfillment in my work, dedicating myself to it for 5 years. Then, a younger male colleague, who joined the company that year, suddenly confessed his feelings to me. "Actually, I've been attracted to you since I first saw you, Zoe. Would you go out with me?" he asked one day after work. This colleague, Joseph, who was 5 years younger than me, would later become my husband. "Why me? Is this some kind of joke?" I was more perplexed than happy when he confessed. After all, Joseph was quite handsome and popular in the office. Despite the fact that there were many more beautiful employees at the company than me, Joseph chose to confess to me, someone with a plain appearance. I couldn't help but suspect that he might just be playing around, though I felt sorry for doubting him. But Joseph looked at me earnestly and continued. "I've always admired how hard you work and how well you take care of your juniors. I find your dedication and kindness really attractive." I was surprised to hear this from Joseph, someone I had hardly spoken to before. I never expected someone like him, who seemed to have it all, to notice someone like me. Truthfully, until Joseph confessed, I hadn't paid him any special attention. Even as other female colleagues whispered, "He's so handsome," to me, Joseph seemed like a distant figure, probably experienced with women. However, his sincere demeanor at that moment deeply moved me. When I bashfully looked down and replied, "If you're okay with someone like me, then yes," I still clearly remember his delighted smile when I looked up. I had virtually no experience dating men. In high school, I was constantly compared to Sophia, so love was out of the question. In college, a brief relationship ended with the guy calling me dull and plain, and breaking it off unilaterally. So, when I started dating someone as attractive as Joseph, I was ecstatic. Later, we moved in together and our relationship flourished. Joseph even visited my father a few times a year. My father was overjoyed that I had a boyfriend. Joseph seriously told him, "I want to marry Zoe someday," and I was thrilled by his feelings. 3 years later, we married. I was 30 and Joseph was 25. Our colleagues warmly congratulated us on our marriage, and I felt on top of the world. Joseph transferred departments after our marriage, but we both continued to work hard. After registering our marriage, we went to visit my father to formally introduce Joseph as my husband. My father was happy about our marriage, but I hadn't told Sophia about it. She might have learned from my father, but she never contacted me. I know her contact information, but since moving out, we hadn't been in touch, and I avoided seeing her when visiting home. Sophia still lives there. Having repeated a year in high school and 2 years in college, and is set to graduate this year. We carefully planned this visit to avoid meeting her. While my father, Joseph, and I were chatting amicably, the sound of the front door opening interrupted us, followed by a familiar voice saying, "I'm home." I was taken aback and froze. Sophia, as I feared, was the one who walked into the living room. "What's up, Sophia? You're home early today," my father greeted her. "My plans got cancelled, so I came back." "Wait, who's this guy? He's pretty handsome," Sophia said, ignoring me and ogling Joseph after explaining her cancelled plans. Uncomfortably watching my husband being appraised, I wanted to ask her to stop, but Joseph, seeing my sister suddenly appear, lit up and said with a smile, "Nice to meet you, I'm Zoe's husband, Joseph." Joseph stood up and walked over to Sophia with a smile. My husband, obviously smitten, and my sister, introducing herself with a not-so-displeased attitude. I felt an unpleasant premonition as she glanced at me and smirked. "I heard from Dad you got married, but I had no idea your husband was so handsome. You, being so plain, are quite lucky, aren't you?" "Sophia, that's not a nice thing to say." My father immediately reprimanded Sophia, but she seemed unaffected. Instead, she leaned on Joseph's arm and asked flirtatiously, "How old are you, Joseph? What do you like to do on your days off?" She looked up at him with a coquettish voice. Joseph didn't seem to mind and continued the conversation closely, leaving me at a loss for what to do. "Sophia, that's enough." When I was too upset to be angry, feeling a vague sense of anxiety that almost made me cry, my father strongly scolded Sophia. Relieved inside, I watched as Sophia glared at me and then, looking dissatisfied, moved away from Joseph and left the living room. After that, the conversation with my father didn't go well, and we decided to go home. However, just as we were about to exit the front door, Sophia, who was supposed to have gone to her room, came back and cozied up to Joseph again. As Sophia said, "Joseph, come visit again," and quickly moved away from him, I couldn't shake off a bad feeling. This was because, throughout his conversation with Sophia, Joseph looked very pleased, with a smug expression on his face. It was clear to me that he was captivated by the beauty of Sophia. Back home, I noticed a significant change in Joseph's behavior. He started carrying his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom, never letting it out of his sight. "What's going on lately? Are you expecting a call from someone?" I asked, puzzled by his behavior. But Joseph just brushed me off irritably, saying, "It's none of your business, stop nagging." His attitude towards me had grown cold. Conversation had dwindled, and increasingly he would leave home alone on weekends, returning either late at night or the next morning. When I asked where he had been, he always evaded the question. I didn't want to doubt Joseph too much, but as these incidents kept happening frequently, my mistrust only grew. Then, one day, I had to go on a business trip and leave the house for several days. The trip was supposed to last 3 days, but I finished work half a day early and managed to return home on the second night. I had emailed Joseph beforehand, but there was no reply when I reached home. Thinking he might have missed my message, I didn't worry too much and opened the front door. To my surprise, I found a pair of unfamiliar women's high heels discarded in the entrance. The instant sight of them triggered the same uneasy feeling I had when Joseph first met Sophia. Joseph was nowhere to be seen in the living room. But I heard voices coming from the bedroom. As I slowly opened the closed door, I was met with a shocking scene. There they were, Joseph and Sophia, entwined in each other's arms, completely undressed.
"What are you two doing?"
I managed to utter, my thoughts nearly freezing in shock.
"What's up? Weren't you supposed to come back tomorrow?"
It seemed Joseph hadn't checked his smartphone after all. He complained without any sign of remorse while getting dressed. He must have ignored my messages.
"Ugh, we were at a good part. You've always been so clueless,"
Sophia said irritably, getting dressed as well.
"Sophia, what is this? This is cheating."
I confronted her in a rage, but Sophia just sneered dismissively.
"What's the problem? Joseph and I agreed on this. He said he prefers me over someone plain like you," she boasted, snuggling up to Joseph.
Joseph, looking content, stroked Sophia's hair, completely ignoring me, his wife. Watching them, my anger rapidly cooled, replaced by a fading of love for Joseph. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and started using it.
"Hey, darling, have you been distant lately and glued to your phone because you've been in touch with Sophia?"
I asked calmly. Joseph finally looked at me and snorted.
"Yeah, Sophia's beautiful and charming, unlike you. Poor Sophia, having an ugly sister like you."
He mocked, praising Sophia. It turned out that during our last visit to my father's house, Joseph had taken an instant liking to Sophia. Sophia seemed to feel the same. When we were leaving and she came to see us off, she stealthily slipped a note with her contact information into Joseph's pocket. Joseph openly bragged about how he started the relationship with Sophia by responding to the contact details she left for him. Furthermore, he hurled insults at me, saying, "I only married you because I knew about your achievements and thought you'd make a good wallet. Otherwise, who would want to be with someone as ugly as you?" Hearing this, my vision nearly went dark. His words plunged me into darkness. His sincere demeanor when he confessed to me was just a lie to deceive me. Holding back tears, I hurriedly called my father to report what Sophia and Joseph had done. My father arrived promptly, saw them together, and shouted,
"What foolishness is this?"
Sophia showed no remorse, even as our father scolded them. Joseph shamelessly admitted, "I'm sorry, but I've fallen in love with Sophia." Disappointed, my father sighed deeply. "Enough, Sophia. I disown you. I've overlooked your selfishness until now, but not anymore. Don't expect any help with job hunting or come back home," he said sternly. Unmoved, Sophia retorted,
"Fine. I'll be happy with Joseph anyway."
Not a single word of apology to our father, despite being raised by him until today. My disgust towards her grew. I glared at them both, reached my limit, and declared,
"Fine, do as you please, Joseph. I want a divorce. Good riddance. Don't ever show me your ugly face again."
I was so over Joseph's insults they didn't even register anymore. The thought of having spent even a moment married to someone like him seemed utterly foolish to me. After I told Joseph about the divorce, I left him and them behind and moved out of our apartment that very day. I moved back home and quit my job, but thanks to my father, I quickly found a new one. He works at a foreign-owned company similar to the one I had been at. And he used his high position there to talk to the president about hiring me. They were recruiting at the time, and I was able to join them. By the time my divorce was finalized, it seemed that Joseph had quit his job and moved away with Sophia, but I had no idea of their whereabouts. I settled into a peaceful life with my father and adjusted well to my new job. 2 years had passed since then. I had nearly forgotten about Joseph and Sophia when something completely unexpected happened. One day, a day off from work, the doorbell rang while I was doing housework. When I opened the door, there stood Joseph and Sophia, whom I hadn't heard from in so long. At the sight of me, they both smirked condescendingly. "Hey, ugly, how have you been?" Joseph said to me, catching me off guard with their sudden visit.
You still have that plain look on your face. Seriously, are you still single and living with Dad? That's hilarious.
Sophia snickered.
What are you doing here?
I asked wearily. Sophia flaunted her left hand, where a ring glinted on her finger. And Joseph wore a matching one.
We got married, so we thought we should at least greet Dad once. Now, Joseph and I are living happily together.
I could hardly believe they had the nerve to say such things to an ex-wife. I wanted to shut the door in their faces, but they pushed past me and barged into the house.
Move it, ugly, is your dad home?
Joseph deliberately bumped into my shoulder and brazenly crossed the threshold of the house. Sophia, who was supposed to be disowned by my father, appeared with an arrogant attitude, as if she had forgotten all about it. Then, hearing the commotion, my father emerged from the back of the house. Initially surprised to see Sophia and Joseph, he quickly put on a smile.
Oh, isn't that Sophia? And Joseph is with you too? You've come back at just the right time. I have something to discuss with both of you, come over here.
Encouraged by my father's reaction, Sophia and Joseph seemed pleased. And lightly headed towards the living room, so I followed them. As they casually sat down on the house's sofa, my father handed them some documents. They took them without suspicion, but as soon as they saw the contents, their expressions froze. It was a demand for compensation for infidelity against me.
What's this? Dad, what does this mean?
Father, now with a stern face, glared at them sharply, a stark contrast to his earlier smile.
What does this mean? I never forgave you for what you did to Zoe. I couldn't do anything as I had no way of contacting you, but now that you've returned, I'll make sure to claim the compensation.
Sweating, Sophia and Joseph fell silent in front of my determined father.
At the time, Zoe had gathered photos and audio recordings of you two in the act of infidelity, so we have all the evidence we need. There's no escaping this.
Faced with my father's relentless inquiry, Sophia and Joseph fell silent. 2 years ago, when I first witnessed their affair, I had secretly recorded the audio on my phone and took silent pictures. I still have those data on my phone, ready to present as evidence of their affair at any time. There's no way we can pay such a huge amount, Joseph said in despair. However, my father's expression softened as he said, Actually, there's one more thing I need to discuss with you. He then pulled out some more documents from a drawer and handed them to Sophia and Joseph. I already knew this, but the documents they were signing were for the transfer of this family home as a gift. My father proposed to give them the house as a gift inter vivos. As expected, both of them immediately lit up at the proposal.
So, you're giving us this house? Why didn't you say so earlier? Then, we can sell this house to pay off the alimony.
It was clear they were only thinking about selling the family home for money. They seemed desperate for cash, eager to grab this lucrative opportunity, and started signing the documents without hesitation.
Poor you, living with Dad and getting nothing.
Sophia mocked me after signing. She seemed to think I was getting nothing from our father. As I remained silent, they prepared to leave, thinking their business was done.
See you later, Dad. You two better pay Zoe her alimony soon.
My father sternly reminded. Joseph replied nonchalantly, Understood. Thank you for giving us your house. I watched the two leave, still mocking me, in high spirits. After they left, my father looked at me, nodding and smiling. I nodded back and started packing for a particular reason. Actually, my father and I had already planned to move out of this house soon. When Sophia and Joseph appeared, it was perfect timing for my father to propose the gift inter vivos. After we left, they tried to sell the house quickly, but it was old and significantly deteriorated. I know this because they called once about it.
You really had the nerve to stick us with such a rundown house. It's not even worth any money.
As soon as the call connected, Sophia was fuming, but I had no intention of taking her seriously.
You were the ones who happily signed the contract, I don't know anything about the money. All I care about is getting my alimony. No way!
I ignored Sophia's dismay and hung up the phone. In the end, selling the house didn't come close to covering the alimony, and it seemed Sophia and Joseph ended up in debt, working tirelessly every day. Joseph had already switched jobs, but his salary was lower than at his previous company, making their life more difficult. Furthermore, Sophia, who had lived off her parents' and Joseph's earnings until now, had never worked a day in her life. So, she was reportedly struggling a lot with the unfamiliar work life at the company she managed to get hired at. One day, as they were burdened with a hefty debt, my sister and her husband called me again. However, I was on a plane with my father at the time and had turned off my smartphone, so I didn't notice the call. We were on an international flight, out of range for over half a day. After getting off the plane and checking my smartphone, there were dozens of texts from Sophia and Joseph, demanding a redo of the gift inter vivos. How selfish can they get? We've already received the alimony, and I have no intention of getting involved with those two anymore, my father muttered, apparently having received a ton of texts as well. He started deleting all of them, clearly annoyed. I too wanted nothing more to do with them. After all, we were overseas now, unlikely to meet them again. From then on, I blocked their calls and contact details, cutting off any communication from Sophia and her husband. In fact, my father and I had decided to live overseas from now on. And now, I'm remarried, and my husband was with me on the plane. I met my husband through a company I joined, thanks to my father's arrangement. He was an expat employee from abroad, drawn to my intelligence and thoughtfulness. He approached me, and soon after, we got married. Recently, my company launched an overseas expansion project, and with my ability to speak Spanish, my husband, my father, and I relocated abroad as a team of 3. Thanks to my husband, a local resident, we were able to purchase a luxurious detached house. Since moving into our new home, I've completely forgotten about the unpleasant experiences back in the US. Now, I'm living freely and working hard in this new land. Together with my husband and father, I find great fulfillment in our overseas project and am thoroughly enjoying our new life. On weekends, we visit beautiful sceneries, living happily as a family of 3.
Hey! You're in there, right? Where are you? Come out, please! Ah, it's you, isn't it? You've grown up so much. I've finally found you. I'm your real mom.
Who's this old lady? Looks like you've grown up healthy. That's great.
Hey, Mike. Why show up now after all this time?
I heard you landed a job at a big corporation. Makes me so proud. I'm sorry for leaving you alone all these years. We just didn't have the financial means to raise you. I'm truly sorry. You're old enough to earn your own living now. Our financial situation doesn't matter anymore, right? Let's live together and fill the 23-year gap in our parent-child relationship. When my niece was born with a disability, my brother and his wife abandoned her at our parents' house and disappeared. 23 years later, they've returned, barging into the house, planning to take her away. It seems they've heard she landed a job at a big corporation and are looking to mooch off her. But my niece is smart, she won't fall for their tricks. Real mom and dad? Can I really live with you?
What?
I'm momentarily shocked by my niece's response. But her words. Actually, I am Emily. A 35-year-old corporate employee. I've lived a work-centered life. My strict attitude at work has made me somewhat feared, and I'm aware I'm becoming the old guard. Having given up on romance. Some might find my life lonely, but work is enough for me, so I don't feel that way. Although I'm not interested in love or marriage, the thought that work is my only joy does make me a bit uneasy. I also feel bad for not being able to show my parents their grandchild. For grandchildren, I guess they have to rely on my brother. My brother Mike, 3 years younger than me, is the complete opposite of my introverted self. He's incredibly outgoing. As a college student, He rarely came home during summer breaks, preferring to hang out with friends. He also loved organizing big get-togethers for seasonal events like Halloween and New Year's Eve. I've been invited too. Hey sis, wanna join our next party? I'm good, thanks. Why not? You've never had a boyfriend, right? You might meet someone. I'm not interested, just leave me be. I'm 35 and have never had a boyfriend. Unlike Mike, who, while not being a heartthrob, has always been popular, with no shortage of friends and romantic interests. He's hardly been without a partner since college. It's nice to live every day as if it's your birthday. But I've had my concerns.
Mike, are your grades okay? Yeah. I always calculate the credits needed for graduation and how many classes I can skip without trouble. Sounds like you're always on the edge of failing. Shouldn't you study more seriously? What are you even doing in college? As long as I graduate, it's all good, right? You should try having some fun instead of just studying. You're the one who plays too much.
Even when we talk, his phone is constantly buzzing with messages and social media notifications. A stark contrast to mine, which barely receives anything but app notifications. He's what you'd call living the life. But to me, it seemed like he was just postponing his problems. After graduating, Mike got a job and moved out. As I had done earlier. Our parents were left alone at home. I remember calling my mom the day Mike left.
Mike moved out today, didn't he? Yes, now we're finally done with parenting. It feels like we've accomplished something,
she said with a mix of satisfaction and a tinge of sadness. Since then, I've made a point to regularly contact our parents. Living only an hour's drive from our family home, I tried to visit as often as possible. Every time I returned home, our parents were visibly happy, seemingly missing us. But it seemed I was the only one keeping in touch.
I wonder what Mike's up to these days. He lives a bit far, so it's not easy for him to come home, right? But he could at least call, couldn't he? Don't boys usually behave like that?
Mom sighed softly. She was clearly worried about him. I shared her concern, wondering if Mike was still living with a student mindset. When I got back home, I decided to call Mike for the first time in a while.
Hello?
Sis, what's up?
I know you can't come home often, but you haven't been in touch with Mom at all, have you? She's worried about you.
Always so serious, huh? Okay.
Tell her I'm doing fine. Tell her yourself. And you're working properly, right?
Yeah, I am.
Just doing what I'm told, so it's a breeze. There you go again with that careless attitude. Work is different from college, you know.
Okay, I get it. Mike sounded increasingly disinterested, his tone dropping and his responses getting shorter. He still considered me too serious, and it seemed he hadn't changed much either. Worried about him, I decided to call him regularly, just like I did with our parents. It might be nosy, but I can't help worrying about family. I started calling Mike regularly and updating Mom about his situation. It seemed to bring her some peace of mind, as her voice sounded brighter when I told her about Mike's circumstances. However, Mike gradually stopped answering my calls and eventually stopped altogether. It's been 5 years now with no contact, and he hasn't shown his face at home. Mike's 32 now, huh? I wonder if he's still working at the same company? Maybe he's changed jobs and moved? One day, while quietly eating dinner alone at home, I suddenly found myself thinking about Mike. Little did I know that this was a premonition of things to come. As I ate dinner with the TV sound as my background music, my phone rang. The only calls I usually get are app notifications or from Mom. I paused my dinner to answer Mom's call.
Hello, what's up? I got a call from Mike.
Mom sounded excited, almost breathless. I figured she must be thrilled to hear from Mike after 5 years, but it seemed there was more to her joy.
Mike's coming home.
Huh, that's unusual. Did something happen?
He's having a baby. Really?
I was genuinely surprised. A baby for Mike, of all people. Mike isn't married, so it's a case of a baby coming before marriage. Shotgun weddings aren't uncommon, and neither I nor our parents have the old-fashioned mindset that marriage must come first. In fact, Mom and I both laughed, finding it so typical of Mike that his first contact in 5 years was to announce a baby. When's he coming? Next month. I'll come home too then. I'd like to meet Mike's fiancée. I decided to go back to our family home to celebrate with Mike. Imagining my brother as a responsible adult, I found my appetite returning as I resumed my dinner. But the reality of Mike's situation was far different from what I had imagined. Hey! Dad. Mom. Can we stay here at this house? What? Mike's fiancée, Christy, stood there, her hands on her visibly pregnant belly, looking down uncomfortably. The day Mike returned, Mom and I welcomed him and Christy at the door. After brief greetings, we led them to the living room where Dad was. Mike, about to share news of the pregnancy and marriage, sat before us with a somber expression. An uneasy silence filled the air, preventing anyone from speaking first. Then, in a thin voice, Mike broke the silence, expressing his wish to return home. What do you mean? Well, I haven't been able to hold down a job. I've been hopping from one job to another, and at 32, with no real skills or achievements, job hunting's getting tough. Right now, I'm unemployed, and my savings are almost gone. And the baby is almost due. So, you're out of options and want to come back home? You were right, sis. I regret not working more seriously. I know it's too late for regrets. But seeing Christy's belly grow, I realized I need to step up. Please, let us stay here until after the baby is born. I know it's rude to ask to stay the first time I visit. But we have nowhere else to go. Please, can we stay? Mike and Christy both had their faces flushed red, their eyes brimming with tears. Though Mike's predicament was a result of his own doing, he must have reflected on his actions and struggled up to this point. Looking at our parents, I could tell they were resigned to accepting Mike and Christy. They probably wanted to give Mike a chance to recover from his mistakes, but more so, they couldn't bear the thought of their first grandchild facing hardships. You can stay in this house, but in return, Mike, you need to find a job. Thank you. I'll work hard. With Dad's permission, Mike and Christy started living in our family home. They had planned to register their marriage after the baby was born, but since Christy was moving in, they decided to get married sooner as a form of commitment. Now, Mike and Christy were officially husband and wife. All that was left was for Christy to give birth safely and for Mike to find a job and get their lives back on track before moving out. I thought everything was heading towards a resolution, but the situation worsened. 2 months later, Christy gave birth. Mike left his work early to go to the hospital. The next morning, knowing it was a bit inconvenient, I called Mike before he left for work. Congratulations. The baby was born, right? Yeah. I thought Mike would be overjoyed as it was the day after his baby's birth. But the tone of his voice was as if he was walking through hell. I have to go to work now. I can't be late since I just started this job. Oh. Sorry. Have a good day. After Mike hung up, I immediately called Mom. Mom, what's up with Mike? That's the thing, I don't know. He's been down since he returned from the hospital yesterday. He won't answer any of my questions. It was clear that something had happened to Mike. Given his condition, Mom and I decided it was best to leave him alone until he was ready to talk, and for now, just celebrate Christy's childbirth. 3 days after Christy's delivery, my parents and I went to the hospital to visit her and see the baby. That's when we learned why Mike was so down. Please, take a look at the baby. We're planning to name her Lily. Oh, she's adorable. She's going to be as pretty as Christy. My parents were speechless with joy, just smiling and gazing at their granddaughter's face. I was also admiring the cute baby when I noticed something. Huh? Her hand? I hesitantly rolled up the baby's sleeve. Lily's right hand had only 3 fingers. It's called congenital limb deficiency. It happens in about 1 in 1,000 births. Christy explained in a small voice, tears spilling as she sat on the bed. My parents and I were at a loss for words. It sounded like schoolchildren were leaving nearby, their voices faintly reaching the quiet hospital room. But she's here with us, safe and sound. Let's make her happy. If there's anything I can do, just let me know. I'll help. Emily, Christy seems tired. We've seen the baby, so shall we head home for today? Christy, we'll visit again tomorrow. I wanted to cheer up the disheartened Christy. However, Mom seemed to think it was best to leave her alone for now. As I had no experience with childbirth, I decided to follow Mom's judgment and we left for the day. On the way home from the hospital, I quickly realized Mom's decision was right. Just because the baby has a disability, it's still a good thing she was born, right? Why be so down about it? I think Christy isn't shocked about having a baby with a disability, but rather, she feels guilty for giving birth to a baby with a condition, Mom speculated. I felt embarrassed for trying to forcefully cheer up Christy. Back at home, I found Mike there. To avoid making the same mistake I did with Christy, I chose my words carefully and spoke slowly. I saw the baby. She's adorable. She's going to be a beauty when she grows up. What's the use of being pretty if she has monster-like hands? Mike retorted. Hey! What are you saying? I understood Mike was shocked about his daughter. But I couldn't just let that comment slide. So, I decided to stop mincing my words. I don't know the details, but if her right hand is impaired, then as parents, we should be the ones to help her. So what if she's a little different from others? We have to raise that monster for the rest of our lives? I'd finally find a job, ready to get our lives back on track, and then she's born like that? How can I possibly feel motivated to work? Motivation? What do you mean? Your child isn't a tool for you to feel motivated at work. You wouldn't understand, Emily. You've never been a parent. Sure, I've never given birth, so I might not understand a parent's feelings. But I do know you're saying something fundamentally wrong as a person. Yeah. I'm wrong, fine. Why did I have to draw the short straw in 1 in 1,000? It's such a hassle. Mike walked out of the house with a lethargic gait. Did I choose my words wrongly again? Unfortunately, as Mike said, I lack the experience of being a parent. Engaging in conversation might lead to more conflicts like before, so it's better to leave this to our parents. Consequently, troubled over how to interact with Mike and Christy, I decided to stop visiting the family home for a while. However, during my absence, a terrible incident occurred. 1 week after Christy was discharged from the hospital and returned home, Mom called me early in the morning. Emily! Come home immediately! What? Why so early in the morning? Mike and Christy are gone! What? I grabbed only my wallet with my driver's license and rushed to the family home in my car, still in my pajamas. Look at this! Upon arriving, I was shown a torn piece of paper from a notepad with Mike's sloppy handwriting. Please take care of our daughter. What does this mean? I don't know. This note was all that was left when we woke up. Wasn't Mike supposed to work hard because his daughter was born? No, maybe his true feeling was that raising a disabled child was too much trouble. Did Christy not find their daughter, who grew inside her and was finally born, cute? If she did, she wouldn't abandon her newborn. I exploded in anger at Mike and Christy for changing their attitude so drastically just because of a disability and leaving their daughter with just a note. What do you mean I wouldn't understand a parent's feelings? Don't abandon your responsibilities. My outburst frightened Lily, making her cry. Hearing her cry, I calmed down a bit. This innocent child shouldn't suffer because of this. I'll become her mother. The words came out naturally as I looked at Lily. Naturally, my parents panicked and tried to stop me. You can't just suddenly become a mother. Let's wait and see.
Maybe Mike and Christy will come back. We'll take care of Lily for now. They're not coming back.
Careful consideration is necessary in making decisions. However, sometimes it's important to act swiftly. I conveyed my firm resolve to my parents through the determination in my eyes.
All right, but you can't do it alone. We'll support you.
And so, we decided to raise Lily together. First, we needed to address the legal aspect, as Mike and Christy still had parental rights. A mere note saying, "Please take care of our daughter," wasn't enough. Mike and Christy were untraceable, having changed their phone numbers. So, I decided to become Lily's legal guardian under the minor guardianship system, citing their long-term absence. Now, I was effectively Lily's mother. But it was a challenging process that took a considerable amount of time. I couldn't quit my job while raising her. So my parents helped me with childcare. Alongside raising Lily, I kept a casual eye out for Mike and Christy's whereabouts. Not to return Lily to them, but because I wanted to give them a piece of my mind. I had no intention of giving Lily back to them. 10 years after taking Lily in, she grew up healthy and unaffected by her right hand. She has a spirited personality, once even standing up to a boy who teased her about her hand at school. While violence isn't praiseworthy, it's good to be strong. Being left-handed, she doesn't have many problems in daily life. Just minor inconveniences like struggling to open small snack bags or not being able to hold utensils with her right hand. Now that Lily is 10, it's time to seriously consider certain things.
When should we tell Lily about Mike and them? Isn't 10 years old too soon? Maybe it would be better before she starts working?
I still haven't told my daughter that I am not her biological mother. Although I consider her as my own, being called mom can sometimes be painful since I haven't disclosed the truth. 10 more years have passed, and my daughter is now a 20-year-old college student. Our lives have also undergone significant changes.
Mom, thank you for all your help. I'll take care of the rest.
Standing in front of the grave, I joined my hands and expressed my future determination to my mother. My father had already passed away 3 years ago. Even though my parents are gone, there's something I decided 10 years ago that I must do.
Lily, come here for a second.
What's up? One night, I called my daughter to the living room and had her sit down in front of me. I had decided with my parents to tell her about Mike and his wife before she became an adult working. As her job hunting was about to begin, I chose to tell her the truth. The thought of her reaction to learning that I am not her birth mother made me suddenly tense up, my breathing became erratic, and I couldn't find the words to start. Seeing me so unusually tense, Lily looked at me with concern. Once I had come this far, I couldn't just say nothing, so I braced myself.
Lily, you are actually my brother's child.
What? What do you mean?
My words left Lily visibly shaken and she seemed to react with a half laugh, not knowing how to process it. I explained to her the whole truth about how I took her in. The irresponsibility of Mike and his wife at work, their reaction when she was born, and how they left her with only a note. Hearing all this might make her feel sad. But I had to tell her. So, with a clenched fist and a strong heart, I continued. As I recounted everything, Lily's face gradually reddened.
What? They're the worst. Instead, I'm thankful they left me behind and you raised me, Mom.
Really? Oh, okay.
Mom, why that face?
I must have looked dumbfounded because Lily accepted the truth so easily. I had braced for her to be upset, but she wasn't, which took me by surprise. The happiness of her still calling me Mom despite knowing the truth came to me later.
So, where are Mike and his wife now?
I don't know. For the past 20 years, we haven't found Mike and his wife. They occasionally show up to other relatives or acquaintances. But they disappear without revealing their whereabouts, so we never really know where they are. But I'm not actively trying to find them, so it's okay if they remain unfound. 3 more years passed, and Lily graduated from college and started working. She didn't move out, though. I live in a suburb within commuting distance to the office. It's accessible by train to the business district. Lily also got a job at a company near where I work, so there's no need for her to leave home.
You chose a company close by so you wouldn't have to move out, right?
Yeah. It saves on rent, doesn't it?
Choosing a job like that, are you sure it's okay?
It's fine. Don't worry. Her casual way of handling important matters somewhat reminds me of my brother. I wonder if this kind of thing is related to blood. However, my daughter and my brother are vastly different in one crucial aspect. My daughter got a job at a large corporation. She seems even more capable at her job than I am, already entrenched in my workaholic ways. Not only is she academically gifted, but she also possesses quick decision-making skills and the ability to act promptly, which are extremely important in the working world. With the knowledge and skills she will acquire at the company, she'll be unstoppable. Unlike my brother, I have no worries about her in the social world. I hope she will thrive in her career. One morning, the doorbell rang unexpectedly early. I checked the monitor and was at a loss for words. On the monitor were a man and a woman who looked all too familiar, though far from neat in appearance and haggard. It took me a moment to recognize him, but the man was undoubtedly my brother. Unchanged even after 20 years. Recognizing him, I knew the woman beside him had to be his wife.
Who is it? I don't know, but I'll go check.
Not wanting Lily to meet Mike and his wife, I hurried to the door without responding to them through the intercom. Their sudden arrival left me wondering about their intentions. It wasn't a conversation for the doorstep. I planned to take them to a nearby park to talk. Opening the door without securing the chain, a mistake. The moment I opened the door, Mike forcefully pushed it open.
Hey! Lily! You're there, right? Where are you? Come out, please!
As they barged in uninvited, raising their voices loud enough for the neighbors to hear, they began searching for Lily.
Ah. You're Lily, right? You've grown up. We finally met. I'm your real mom.
Who's this old lady? You seem to have grown up well. That's good. When Mike and his wife entered the living room, they found Lily having breakfast. Surprised by the sudden intrusion of strangers, she became defensive and her tone harsh. I followed them into the living room shortly after.
Hey, Mike! What are you doing here now?
Hearing me call out Mike's name, Lily looked startled. Being sharp, she seemed to realize these were the people I had talked about, her biological parents. I heard you landed a job at a big corporation. Your strength in overcoming your disability makes me so proud.
I'm sorry for leaving you alone all these years. We just didn't have the financial means to raise you. I'm really sorry.
You're old enough to earn your own living now. Our financial situation doesn't matter anymore, right? Let's live together and fill the 23-year gap in our parent-child relationship. It was clear that Mike and his wife, having heard about Lily's employment at a big corporation, were looking to mooch off her. But my daughter is smart, she won't fall for their tricks. I wasn't worried about her reaction. Instead, I was concerned about how to get Mike and his wife out of the house. Real mom and dad? Can I really live with you?
What?
I couldn't help but exclaim. Mike and his wife, noticing my reaction, looked at me and smirked.
Yeah, it's better to live with your real parents, right? Come on, say thank you to your fake mom and let's go.
But, wait a minute. I need to know more about you too before I can make a decision.
Let's talk about it when we get back home.
Yeah, let's do that. Mom, I'm sorry. I want to find out who my parents are, who I haven't seen for 23 years.
Lily.
My daughter stares into my eyes desperately. Her uncle and his wife watch this with smirks on their faces. They probably think that if they can just take her away from here, everything else will fall into place. But I caught a glimpse of some strategy in my daughter's eyes. This unspoken message, something only a parent and child of 23 years would understand, seems to be lost on her uncle and his wife.
Well, shall we go then? Thank you for taking care of my daughter.
With triumphant smiles, the uncle and his wife leave. I trust my daughter and decide to just sit on the living room sofa and wait. I never knew simply waiting could feel so long. The clock's hands seem to move slower than usual. I'm home. In the evening, my daughter returns as if she'd just been out playing with friends.
Welcome back. Everything okay? Nothing weird happened?
I'm fine. But look at this, I got it all together.
Huh?
What she hands me is a notebook. Inside, over several pages, is a summary of what her uncle and his wife have been up to over these 23 years.
It was tough getting it all together. They're not great at telling stories, so I had to piece together the important bits. So that's what you were doing. Of course. I wouldn't really go to their place. Just heard them out and came straight back.
According to my daughter, after leaving our family home, her uncle and his wife kept changing jobs. Their living places changed frequently too. But these moves weren't for job hunting.
They've been borrowing money and running away. So they show up at relatives and acquaintances, borrow money, and then run away again. They said they'd paid off their debts and came to take me in, but that's obviously a lie. Wonder how desperate they must be to rely on the money of someone who's just started working? If we think about why they had to show up in front of us, they must be really desperate. That's what it seems like. Oh, and here are their 2 addresses. That's the most important info, right?
My daughter proudly points to the address of her uncle and his wife she noted in her notebook. In just half a day, she had exposed the whereabouts of her uncle and his wife, who had been elusive for 23 years. Feeling proud of her, I pull out my smartphone. A week later, my brother and his wife came to our house again.
Hey! What did you guys do? You've caused us so much trouble. How are you gonna take responsibility?
They seem panicked this time, not even ringing the doorbell but banging on the door and yelling. To avoid disturbing the neighbors, I stop preparing breakfast and head to the front door.
Should I come too? No need to let those 2 see Lily. That would be a waste.
I go to the door alone, this time opening it with the chain on. As expected, my brother tries to force the door open. But with the chain, the door only opens a bit, and he has to peek through the gap.
Relatives and acquaintances showed up at our house demanding their money back. What did you do? I just shared your address, which Lily got from you, with the people you've visited over the past 20 years. You knew we were borrowing and running? Of course. I'm not like you, I keep up with relatives. Thought about confronting you before. You borrowed from some shady places, right? I've spread the word to relatives and acquaintances, so even your creditors might catch on. Mike! We can't stay then. We gotta run.
What did they come for? They probably wanted to complain to me and my daughter, but upon realizing their address was more widely known than they thought, they quickly left. They're probably preparing to skip town tonight.
All done?
Yeah, finally over. Took 23 years. This incident should make them realize that Lily is not their child, but mine. This should keep them from showing up in front of us again. I go back to my breakfast, which now tastes even better. I heard from relatives that some dangerous people already knew their address and took them away. A few relatives had gone to their house to ask for their money back and happened to encounter this scene. 3 men in regular suits, polite and kind to my relatives, were there.
Excuse us, but could we speak to them first?
Though smiling, the relatives felt an aura from these men and stepped back, letting them take precedence in demanding the debt repayment. From the next day, my brother and his wife haven't been home. Where they were taken, I don't know, but they've disappeared again. I hope they're somewhere working honestly. My daughter and I continue our lives unchanged, both doing well in our jobs. Next weekend, we plan to visit our parents and report about my brother and his wife.
I came because George insisted, but everyone here is wearing cheap clothes and talking about boring stuff. I couldn't have endured it if it wasn't the last time.
Last time?
As I tilted my head, Michelle smiled slyly.
You know, a rotten orange spoils the bunch. I want to avoid that. Imagine if I had kids in the future? Having a grandfather who's a college dropout and works in a factory would be a terrible influence.
Without caring about the stunned silence around her, Michelle spoke loudly.
Low education and poverty are a family's shame. I don't want stupidity to rub off on me, so I'm cutting ties.
Michelle!
The room fell dead silent. All eyes were on Michelle. Everyone stared at her as if glaring, and she was the focus of everyone's attention. Having a high education doesn't make you superior. If you get too comfortable with that idea, someday you'll face serious consequences. Michelle will learn that the hard way. I am Sally, a 63-year-old housewife. Although I'm a housewife, I help out with my husband, Tyler's work when extra hands are needed. Tyler started working at his current factory as soon as he graduated from high school. He worked diligently and was entrusted with managing the factory 20 years ago. He's a man of effort. Though he was criticized for not going to college, working seriously for decades is no easy feat. I'm proud of Tyler for accomplishing that. We, Tyler and I, have decided to live just the two of us now. Because our only child, George, has found a job and decided to move out. We're back to living as a couple for the first time in a long while. Though it's not new, it's filled with a sense of security. We've been married for 43 years and are still happily together. I hope George finds someone like us if he gets married. Someone he can get along with for a long time. That's my secret wish. But even after turning 30, George never introduced a girlfriend. Maybe marriage is far off for him. Will we ever see our grandchildren? Tyler and I would joke about this until one day, George finally brought home his first girlfriend. Her name was Michelle, a sharp-looking woman. She visited us in a suit, apparently the same age as George, 33. Her strong character seemed to show through her appearance, making her look older than George.
Hello, Sally and Tyler.
Nice to meet you. Her confident greeting overwhelmed us. It was due to the aura she carried, but also because of what George had told us. Michelle was a true elite, highly educated.
I graduated from graduate school. So did my parents.
Her fluent speech definitely had an elite feel to it. In front of her, we were at a loss for words.
Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Sally, his mother. And I'm Tyler, his father.
Nice to meet you. Michelle was with a smile, then observed us intently. What was she looking at?
What's up? May I ask about your highest education level? Which college did you both graduate from?
College?
Tyler and I froze at this question. We didn't study after graduating high school. We were puzzled about how to respond when George quickly stepped in.
Neither of my parents went to college. They've been helping out at the factory since they were young.
Huh?
A factory?
Michelle's neatly groomed eyebrows twitched with skepticism.
Yeah, Dad has been working since he was 15. Now he's even managing the place.
15? Wait, hold on. You mean they didn't even finish college?
I could see a clear change in Michelle's expression. Especially her eyes, they were completely different from before. Cold.
Yeah. Dad dropped out of college. That gave him a lot of work experience, so people trust him. He's got a lot of connections, too.
George meant it as a brag about his dad, but I wasn't sure if it was getting through to Michelle. She just muttered him and kept giving short replies. After that, she hardly initiated any conversation.
This is bad. I might have let George down. Tyler.
I felt a tightness in my chest hearing Tyler's sad tone. From what I saw today, it was clear that Michelle valued education highly. In that case, our family was in the worst position. Tyler and I, from society's perspective, are considered minimally educated. I've regretted not pursuing further education more than once or twice. But it was difficult back in our time. Without financial freedom, college wasn't an option. Certainly not for our families. So, we did the best within our capabilities. We lived our lives with pride, never ashamed of our low education. But I never thought it would hold back our son. If George gets dumped because of this, I'd feel terrible.
It's gonna be alright. I'm sure it'll be okay.
Though I said this to encourage him, I was just as anxious as Tyler. Surprisingly, George and Michelle continued dating and eventually got married. Despite my worries about Michelle's attitude and words back then, if George chose her, she must be right. We trusted George. But the newlywed couple, my son and his wife, didn't visit us much. They lived in the same state, but both seemed busy with their work. George's company is well known, so that was understandable. Michelle must be working hard, too. As long as the two of them were happy, that was enough for us. Tyler and I just wished for their happiness. However, we had a chance to meet them after a long time. It was during the Christmas holiday family gathering. Every year, we invite relatives over for meals and drinks. It's become a yearly tradition. This time, George and Michelle were coming, too. I was unusually nervous about seeing Michelle again. What if the topic of education came up again and she showed the same blatant attitude? I wouldn't know what to do. That was my honest feeling. I didn't want to see Tyler hurt again. I was done with that cold atmosphere. Tyler seemed to share my concerns, giving a wry smile.
Should be happy to see our son and his wife, but here I am, all jittery. It's kind of pathetic, isn't it?
Tyler muttered, looking somewhat sad. And so, with our nerves still on edge, we met Michelle again. George was going to be a bit late, as he had to park the car a bit away. Michelle arrived first, and I greeted her with a smile. Welcome. It's been a while. Have you been well? I tried to keep a smile on my face, even though it felt strained. Then, Michelle returned the smile warmly. Just as I was feeling relieved to see her smile. She said something that shocked me.
Long time no see. Today, I came to make my final assessment. Assessment?
Michelle nodded affirmatively.
You know, Sally, you guys are just high school graduates, right?
Indeed, our educational levels were exactly as Michelle just mentioned. But what did that have to do with anything? As I stood there dumbfounded, Michelle started chuckling.
Come on. Can't you understand even after I spelled it out? This is why conversations with the less educated are so exhausting. What do you mean?
I was clearly being mocked. While I was surprised by Michelle's attitude, I tried not to show it and squeezed out my words.
Oh, Sally, you look so scary. Look, even if the parents are a disappointment, I thought maybe there'd be at least one decent person among the relatives. That's why I decided to come today. It would be nice if you could redeem your family's reputation.
I was appalled at her audacity to say such a thing. Basically, Michelle was calling our education levels a disgrace.
Do you realize how rude you're being?
I couldn't help but raise my voice. True, Tyler and I weren't highly educated, and that might not be something to boast about in society. But that didn't mean we deserved to be called a disgrace.
Oh dear, people without peace of mind get angry so quickly. You're the one who's provoking me.
There you go, blaming others. Just as I thought. If I keep this up, I'll end up like you, Sally.
That would be a nuisance to my family.
Michelle covered her mouth with her hand and chuckled, seemingly amused at me.
Hey! Michelle!
I tried to scold her, but just then, George arrived.
What's wrong, Mom? You look upset. Right now,
I was at a loss for words. I was too angry to speak. George looked at me puzzled, then started chatting amiably with Michelle, and they moved away. I was left there, feeling like crying out of frustration. Even after she said all that, I couldn't even respond. In this awkward atmosphere, our reunion took place. Soon, the rest of the relatives started arriving one after another. As it was an annual event, everyone was quite used to it. The great thing about our family is that regardless of age or gender, those who can help out do so. While I and the caterer prepare the food in advance, if we run out of drinks, whoever wants more goes to get it. If someone needs a cup, they find it themselves. I think it's wonderful how everyone enjoys themselves. After a while, everyone started to slow down on their drinks. There probably wouldn't be any need for more food. I left the kitchen and joined everyone in the spacious living room. It was lively and bustling. Despite feeling nostalgic about the boisterous atmosphere after a year, I couldn't stop thinking about Michelle. She had declared such things to me earlier. I wanted to talk to her before she said something rude to the other relatives. I tried to find a moment to talk to her, but it was difficult as the newlywed couple, my son and his wife, were always surrounded, especially since they were meeting many people for the first time. While I was waiting for the right moment, one of the relatives spoke to Michelle. "How's it going? Getting along well with your husband? Marrying such a beauty. Tyler's boy George might be clumsy, but please take good care of him." Watching the relative put his arm around George, Michelle answered rapidly. "Don't worry. Tyler and George are completely different. Please don't lump them together." "Huh. Okay. Tyler might have dropped out of college and worked in a factory, but my George graduated from college and works at a major company. It's ridiculous to call him clumsy." Michelle glanced at Tyler and covered her mouth, snickering. "When George brought me to his home, I was so surprised. Such an old and poor-looking house, and his father a middle school dropout? It's like the crow gave birth to a hawk. No, more like a hawk hatched from a crow's egg." Michelle laughed out loud. Everyone around was stunned by her unexpected response. That's when it happened. A loud crash sounded as a beer bottle toppled over.
Oh no! This is the worst! It got on my clothes!
"Michelle, let's wipe it off over here." George started wiping Michelle's clothes with a napkin. Everyone was watching them with a mocking gaze.
"If this doesn't come out, you're taking responsibility,"
Michelle grumbled, and someone quietly remarked. "She spilled it herself and then gets upset about it. Is this what they call elite? Blaming others and being smooth-talking." This was followed by a murmur of agreement from the crowd. "If she's so quick to look down on others for being poor, she shouldn't make such a fuss over a little stain. George really has no eye for women." To add insult to injury, a child pointed at Michelle and asked, "Why is that lady getting mad about being wiped? Can't she do it herself?"
"What?"
Michelle's face flushed red with anger. "Michelle, maybe you should change in the back."
"What? You want me to wear Sally's clothes? You must be joking."
I certainly didn't want to lend anything to her. "Calm down, Michelle." George reached out to her, but she shook his hand off and shouted, "I came here because George insisted, but all of you are wearing cheap clothes and talking about nothing interesting. I couldn't have endured it if it wasn't the last time."
"Last time?"
As I tilted my head, Michelle smirked. "You know, one rotten orange spoils the bunch. I want to avoid that. Think about it, if we have kids in the future? A grandfather who dropped out of college and works in a factory would be a terrible influence." Ignoring the stunned silence around her, Michelle spoke loudly. "Low education and poverty are a family's shame. I don't want stupidity to rub off on me, so I'm cutting ties."
"Michelle!"
The room fell into a deafening silence. All eyes were on Michelle. Everyone was staring at her as if glaring. Suddenly, Tyler stood up and approached the couple. With a stern face, he said firmly, "Leave right now."
"Dad, but
"We understand your values well enough. We have our pride too. It's a disconnection then. Fine by us. We don't want an elitist attitude like yours rubbing off on us either." Michelle, seemingly not expecting a rebuttal, looked embarrassed and avoided eye contact. Then, George forcefully grabbed Michelle's arm and the couple left the house. The party eventually resumed. The main topic was, of course, my son and his wife. Tyler and I were encouraged by all the relatives, telling us, "You two have worked hard. You should be proud of that." Some even said, if it comes down to it, we'll support you. Most of them expressed never wanting to associate with my son and his wife again. Later, George visited our house alone. He apologized first for Michelle's behavior.
I knew she was a bit strong in that belief ever since we were dating.
That's an understatement. She's got issues.
George laughed awkwardly. As parents, we wished he would divorce her and come back home, but we couldn't say that to our independent, grown-up son.
Clearly, after what she said, we don't ever want to see Michelle again. It'll be sad not to see you, but if it's a disconnection, we accept it.
Yeah, well, I guess so. George gave a somewhat hesitant reply before changing the subject completely.
Hey, Mom and Dad, ever thought about relocating?
Relocating?
His sudden question took us by surprise, but George started explaining. There's this beautiful island. How about living there, taking it easy and doing some farming? Doesn't that sound interesting? It turned out an old friend of his had started farming there, and George was invited to join.
But we're getting on in years, and we've never farmed before.
Dad, you were talking about retiring soon, right? You said you've handed most of your work over to your subordinates.
This was news to me.
Really?
Yeah, my eyesight's getting worse. That part is true as George says. But why does that lead to relocating and farming?
It's different, but manufacturing in a factory and farming have one thing in common: they both produce things. I think you'd do well, Dad.
And George added,
they say the island is really beautiful. Like moving to a resort area. Doesn't that get you excited? If we're going, it's now or never.
George's pitch sounded like something from a TV infomercial, making Tyler and me look at each other and laugh. The mood had completely changed from talking about disownment just a moment ago.
I wanted to talk about this too because, well, I have something I need to discuss.
Then, George turned serious and broached a particular subject with us.
Are you sure about this?
After hearing him out, Tyler asked, a complex expression on his face. I wasn't feeling too calm about it either. But George seemed determined.
Yeah. Even if it takes time, it's safer this way.
Considering George's suggestion, we decided to accept his proposal. After that, we moved and relocated. It was all new to us, almost like we decided on a whim. Though there were some uncertainties, life after moving turned out to be surprisingly smooth. Life on the island was enjoyable and comfortable, more than we had ever imagined. Tyler even found joy in farming, getting along well with the neighbors. About a year into this new life, we received a call from a familiar person. Michelle.
Where's George? Let me talk to him.
As soon as I answered, Michelle yelled.
What? I'm asking for George's whereabouts. What's going on? Why suddenly?
Michelle, almost hysterical, started explaining.
He's gone. This is serious. Tell me where he is now. Useless.
I don't know what to say. Right, Tyler? I put her on speaker and looked at Tyler standing next to me. Well, we're just low-educated folks, aren't we? And besides, didn't we agree on disownment? No obligation to help then.
But, wait. Just find George and tell him I cried and apologized. I'll call back. You hear me?
With that, Michelle hung up. A few days later, she called again. Like I said before, we can't and won't do anything for you.
What? Your son's causing me trouble, so as his parents, you should.
Trouble? You're the one who's always shifting the blame.
But
it started with your affair, didn't it? I could hear Michelle gasp over the phone.
George told you? He did, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He's proceeding with the divorce.
Divorce?
Michelle's voice cracked. Clearly shaken. It made sense. She was facing ruin.
Wait. You can't just leave me and divorce me like this.
Well, you did spill company secrets to your affair partner, didn't you, Michelle?
That was what George had told us. Michelle had an affair behind George's back and, to make matters worse, she ended up telling all the company's confidential information to her lover. It got out at the company, and now she's panicking, trying to figure out what to do.
Knowing all that, being an elite must be tough. You have to be careful even with your lovers. I mean, who could have thought he'd be an employee of a rival company? But then again, having an affair in the first place is the real issue, isn't it?
Michelle was trying to say something, but her words were muffled and incoherent.
The family lawyers, all united, are preparing to go full force into the divorce with you. Lawyers? What?
After that day, George had apologized to every relative and somehow managed to reconcile. Moreover, Michelle might have looked down on us, but our family is far from foolish. Tyler had just lacked the opportunity to pursue further education, but he managed to achieve results in his factory work. And among our relatives, there are several lawyers and even more who respect Tyler.
That's the situation. You made quite a few enemies that day. But that's... No way! That's unfair!
You just didn't have the eye for people, did you?
Well, I hope George learns to better judge people, especially women, from now on.
We're going to corner her with the entire family behind us. Perhaps sensing our intent, Michelle's voice trembled.
But it was just a moment of folly. A moment of folly can ruin a life, can't it?
Oh, sorry.
We still don't know what will become of your life, do we? Please, I'm sorry, I'll apologize.
Michelle was crying and begging on the phone. After all her arrogance, to end up self-destructing and relying on others, how ironic.
It's a bit too much for us to clean up after an elite like you. And maybe you should focus less on educational background and more on learning some basic human decency?
Michelle was still ranting, but I felt a wave of relief as I hung up the phone. Thanks to our relatives' efforts, the divorce went through. Michelle was forced to resign from her company. She returned to her elite family's home, only to be disowned with the words, "You're a disgrace to our family. You have no place here." Desperate, she turned to friends, but everyone rejected her. Nobody was willing to help her. Resigned, Michelle started looking for day jobs to scrape by. It was a shocking example of how quickly a high-educated person could fall from grace. As for our son, he went on a trip abroad. The day he came to apologize, George told us,
"I'm considering divorcing Michelle." After that day, we talked and realized our values are just too different. When I brought up divorce, she threatened to sue, so I can't do it right away. But she'll slip up eventually, and I'll endure until then. For safety, I'd like you and Mom to stay hidden in your new home in case Michelle comes after you.
Our relocation was, in part, to physically distance ourselves from Michelle if she ever came to us for help. George, always kind-hearted and easily swayed, must have thought of this himself. When the affair came to light, he hid, and after the divorce was final, he left for abroad before she could cling to him. He was more prepared than we thought. Thanks to him, we're now enjoying such a happy retirement. We've blocked her calls, so we're truly strangers now. We'll never have to see her face again. In the end, whether you're highly educated or not, it's all up to the individual. There's no need to judge others based on that. Rather than doing so, it's better to strive to be a wonderful person like Tyler. I'm so happy to have met someone like him.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick, is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, Yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.